This is Kenya's the number one opera in the world, according to Thorin. You're watching Thorin channel, that are also known as the number one existence fan in the world.
Right, this is another one of my Patreon AMAs. The other one wasn't released more than a few days ago. I actually said within that I would do a follow-up one to finish up on the questions for that one. I've already done the thread, and there's my channel on my Discord. You can find the Discord link in the description box below, where if you're a patron, there's an AMA channel you can go and you can submit questions there as well. I'm going to wrap up all these questions, and then the next episode will be the questions from the thread, which you can also find in the link, and the ones from the Discord, at least the best ones. There's some bangers in this one. There's also some that I missed, but I'll find a way to answer them. I can always make shit interesting. I always give you the value add. That's the way I do things. So Shikez says, since you mentioned in a previous AMA that in another life you may have tried becoming a musician. I mean, I effectively did, but I just didn't put enough effort into it. If you could form a band, including yourself, with anybody in the Counter-Strike scene, talent, players, coaches, etc., which individuals would you pick for each instrument and why? What type of music would you make? Just assume they're all proficient. Haha. Right. I'll go like this. Like, I'm going to... Obviously, since you put players and coaches, I don't have to even mind that some of my people switched over, essentially. Right, it goes without saying I'd be on the bass, because that was my instrument. It's the instrument that I always had some sort of weird, I don't know why, I always somehow like... Basically, when I started learning the bass, and the reason I actually got a bass was... I just somehow figured out that was the part of the music that was resonating the most with me, that was fucking with me the most. I mean, obviously, it's like the deep fucking low end. Like, it's just, it penetrates your body. Like, as in, everyone knows the lyrics and they understand they're affected by those and they like that. And I know half the people listening to fucking music think the singer came up with the lyrics and so they, oh my God, he's talking to me. So I was never really on that angle very much. I always thought lyrics were a bit overrated. But most people are going to say, no, mate, lead guitar, because that's the fucking solo. Do, like fucking comfortably numb or something. Yeah, that is straight fire. But here's the problem, is... I've often found that, like, to me, that is like a really beautiful distraction. It's like someone dancing with all this incredible music. But the actual music, to me, that comes from the rhythm section. In my opinion, the rhythm section. I know people say it's the drums. It's the fucking bass guitar. Especially if you've got a genius bass guitar. Like, you know what? Even though, like, yeah, I'd agree. In some sense, the part that you can get the most aesthetic pleasure of out of Pink Floyd is David Gilmour. You know what? In my opinion, the heart of Pink Floyd, and it's fitting that he wrote so much of the music, and in the latter days when he wrote some of those last albums before he left, and people thought they were shit, I thought it was just straight fire, the final cut. So it's fucking Roger Waters. He is the true genius, in my opinion, of Pink Floyd. Not fucking Sid Barrett, who took too many drugs and fucked his own head up and had his own issues anyway. David Gilmour's very, very good, but you know what? Have you seen David Gilmour's stuff since then? Have you seen Roger Waters' stuff since then? Exactly, enough said. Roger Waters effectively wrote a Pink Floyd album by himself. Case closed. So I'd be on the bass. For me, for whatever reason, that's the ultimate instrument. I even noticed, by the way, one of the reasons I got into drum and bass was when I was like, these fucking bass lines are unbelievable. That was like the main shit that people were pushing for years. That's why people like, to me, it's surreal I ever got to interview like TB. For me, people like TB and Calix just ascended to another level with their fucking bass lines. They were unbelievable. So anyway, I'd be on the bass, that goes out saying, and I'm on the bass like Geddy Lee style motherfucker. Or Justin Chancellor. I'm not just some guy in the background. Like, mate, Justin Chancellor, there's Tool fans, if they don't understand music, I mean, some of them probably, to be fair, like, studied that band enough, they'd know this. But, like, there's tracks where someone who doesn't really understand music and the difference between the guitars, they'd think, like, that's a guitar. And it's like, no, that was the bassist who did that whole shit. Like, that entire thing was just him, particularly on like, Lateralis. There's a couple of tracks like that are just unbelievable. So... I'd have my boy Moses on drums, because listen, I always got along with him well. We had a great understanding with the rhythm section. He's the best guy to fill for everyone else. It's even the fucking pun on doing, obviously, drums. I think he'd just be brilliant at it. He's got a workhorse mentality. Yeah, he'd be awesome for that. Also bald. Don't know why I mentioned that, but, you know, let's face it, drummers aren't always the best looking ones. Although he actually did used to look straight fire in his earlier days. You know what? I'll go with, like, ego and angles as well. Lead singer would be Sadikist, because, you know what? He is mega with words. He's got great vocal range and control. He is really talented. It's also a fuck-up, which, you know what, in most rock bands tends to be pretty classic for that to be the lead singer, right? The guy who causes the drama, but it's like, when it is the lead singer, he's the face of the band. We've got to sort of, you know, keep him in. Like, I think it just work in that regard. And also, I think me and Moses, two of the people who could actually maybe handle him. Then I'll get cheeky, since he said players, etc. I won't just make it only talent. So you know what? Sado's my lead singer. I've got to have the guy with the most skill be my lead guitarist, obviously. So I'm going to have, and by the way, I'm already going to cheat on this one, because you probably want me to be like drums, bass, singer, guitar. But you don't have to have only that in a group. Listen, one of my favourite groups ever, Explosions in the Sky. I think they have like fucking 3 guitarists and they're all doing some shit, but it makes it just this god tier like soundscape. So I'm going to take Simple as my lead guitarist, because guess what? This guy has exactly what I want. He's not only mega skilled and mega daring, he has vision that just goes beyond anything. Imagine what his fucking solos would be like. Then, like I said, I'm going to be smart and put another guitarist in this. I'm going to go with the classic rhythm guitarist. So who do I want now? A guy who's going to connect to the rhythm section. He's also going to play some of the shit that sort of echoes what they get. Oh, by the way, I'll just also say Tim Comerford, bassist. Throw that in there before. In terms of like the guitarist, he's going to like mirror some of the stuff he does. And he's going to be like a supportive element that just also helps carry the show. Going to have Cold Zero, probably the best ever at being at Lurker, coming from behind, quick follow up, like Ultimate Insurance Posse, like that. I mean, it's straight fire band, right? In terms of what kind of music we'd make, like just in terms of the personalities of the people I've got there, right? Sado's kind of shit is more like emo / like mildly going into maybe like art rock or something along those lines. Little bit punky. So like I'm not really fucking with most of that music, I have to say. But maybe if we went sort of like a Coheed and Cambria type route, that could like bring him into the mix. And that's still got like some of the complex shit that I like. I like prog rock basically. So I would like some sort of like a new jazz / prog rock approach, but I'm not sure a lot of these other people fuck with that. Simple, unfortunately, because he's from Eastern Europe, the music they tell you from their area is all like almost like folk, like ba-da-ba-la-la-la. Like if you ever see him doing karaoke, it's mental, mate. And then if they ever into Western music, because they just don't have super complicated English understand, they tend to just like trash fucking like mumble rap or like just pop songs or something. So unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be able to really fuck with like a lot of the angles on that stuff. So I'm not really sure what we're doing with Simple in that regard. Moses, I feel like he's more like a classic rock sort of a guy. Feels more like Moses' bag. Who the fuck knows what Cold Zero likes? Presumably he just cried about me, I don't know, about the fact he had me blocked on Twitter or some shit that he kept just going on about in interviews for years. Like, yeah, all right, mate, whatever. Let me see. Maybe that was just a phase he was going through, eh? I mean, obviously for me, like I said, I would just pick prog rock. Like, I've got a lot of skilled people here. Let's go for it. Let's all have our own sections that are fucking sick. Wunza, if that's how you say his name, or Wunzta, or WNZTA. Do you think G2 should replace any player if they fail at Worlds? Like, listen, obviously this was before, but still a good question. And which players could be upgraded? Either Perks or Mickey X IMO before Worlds started based on summer split performance. Yeah, the point you've made there, this is before Worlds, and which is apt, is this. This is the thing people won't get. And I'm going to say this right now. I don't think people like Carlos Ocelot, depending on who he gets, have done the wrong thing by having to make a choice between Caps or Perks or letting one of them go. Like, the problem is this. I was always very impressed by how good Perks was an AD, as an AD, but is he the absolute best AD and will he always be the best AD in LEC / Europe? No. So, in my opinion. So, if he's going to remain at the AD position, he brings a lot of other intangibles that might actually make it worth keeping him so he can win. That's the difficult part. Like I said, I'd never let Perks go under any circumstances. So as a result, by the way, if he needs to stay, I'd essentially just put him mid. But there's other things going on at play there that basically, I'll just say, some of the clout chasers talking shit who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And it will hopefully in the future, when the time is right, be outed that they're full of shit and that there's no abuse at all going on in that scenario. And it is really a situation that's actually entirely fair to everyone involved if you know who has said what and what the promises made, all these sorts of things are. So basically what I would say is this. I personally, if I have to kick someone, like Perks would certainly be on my menu. Like I would try, the problem here is that it's hard to know who else you can get to really be a captain to do that. But you know what, there's others. Like I'm not necessarily going to be able to think of one that I'd pick now. Like I wouldn't necessarily hit, I know he doesn't speak the greatest English necessarily. Well, he's never going to be as good as like the Europeans are, but if you could get Core JJ, there's an angle. Because I agree, Mickey's another one. I do think Mickey's genius, but I also think Mickey was only ever that good with Perks. And secondly, I think Mickey still has a few issues in terms of like, people say yints, but it's not that. That's just a downside to his play sometimes. I think I'm not sure always with all the dynamics in that team. I feel like there's some other connection that sometimes goes awry there. Maybe it's if Jankos underperforms, like Mickey can't get his picks or something. I'm trying to think where it is. But yeah, there's something that sometimes goes a bit off. So I wouldn't necessarily hate the idea you could upgrade Mickey X. In this case, of course, GJ, because I'm getting the leadership aspect, the clutch aspect. Listen, if we want an AD, we can pick a bunch. Like, you know what? An obvious one. I wouldn't take him because I know things about his personality and what a little shit he can be to this day. I wouldn't take Reckless for that reason. But if I didn't know that and I only looked in the server, especially at the way the worlds went, I would take Reckless. Like, look how good he's been the last few years. He's very rarely had a split where he's worse than what, third best AD at worst. The other obvious ones, just in terms of talent, are Upset and Patrick. My issue with the Patrick one is, I think Upset and Talent have a similar... Upset and Patrick have a similar talent level, but I think Patrick hasn't quite developed into like, I'm the carry, give me all the resources. Upset maybe, in terms of ego, goes too far the other way. And my problem with him is, if you're going to do that, my dude, you better give me the forgiven game in the server. Where sometimes I felt like he gave me the reckless game of like, but I couldn't get to the point in the game where I was going to be activated, and I'm just playing all right now with the safe champs. Like, I wanted a little bit, it's like, I like the attitude, I love that, but I want like the game to fully go with it. But I think Upset's the one with the most potential in my opinion. I think he's the one who should be the best ADC, so I wouldn't hate bringing him in. I know everyone had gone, but he was in a worse team, he's in the team that finished last. Yeah, and where were some of the players from G2 who made this super team? Where the fuck was Mickey X before he came into this team? Oh, was Perks winning LEC before he made the team with Cap? No. Years and years ago it was, yeah. Was Wonder a champion when he was in fucking Sprite? No, so don't be stupid. Jankos never made an LEC final. So I think those players are totally legit. In terms of if you could upgrade more, I mean, the obvious one is like, listen, I also wouldn't kick Jankos. I also don't think Jankos actually struggles. I think he sacrifices so much for the rest of the team. You'd only find this out later. Because people would say, like, so I'm just judging junglers. Selfmade was a better jungler this year. The problem is this. I don't think Selfmade, you saw you had to play around him and that enabled him to be super godlike. I've never seen that he can do the supportive aspect as well. So I also think Jankos could be better if he went God mode and convinced himself he could play Lee Sin and he could be the mechanical champion guy. So maybe I have to have a good sports psychologist for that. Or I have to just have a good relationship as the owner. And I also absolutely think that, like, Selfmade hasn't overtaken Jankos yet. He might have overtaken him in individual skill or, like, raw pop-off performances this year. Not as a great player, though. And not even in terms of the intangibles that make up a great player. He's still got to prove that to me. So there's one. In terms of, like, Wonder... Listen, I don't like the fact on one level that he does fuck around and we're never going to get an 18-0 split as long as he plays for us. But who am I going to take instead? The obvious ones, you won't guess them because you're going to say like fucking blah, 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 blah. Like, listen, yeah, Alfari would be a great one. Like, if Alfari wants to join, I wouldn't hate that, not least because I'm trying to have bang a mid laner ADC. And I do think Alfari could sometimes carry, and he's just shown a mentality otherwise. But I also think the threat of G2 is that they will just, when side lanes are available, Wonder and Caps can just go do that as well. And Wonder is unbelievably good at side laning. So as a result, I personally wouldn't replace Wonder. But you know what? If you had to, or you were trying to go by slight margins, Alfari's an obvious one. And then if we want to go with historical ones, I don't think they bring as much as Wonder right now. The obvious two is Kabashad and Odoamne. I think those guys will always be perennially underrated because the second they're not the best, people go, they're just shit, and then they're never shit. They maybe slightly struggle occasionally depending on teammates, and sometimes have way worse teammates. So yeah, there's the obvious ones. What I'm pointing out is you're going to basically upgrade everyone except Caps, right? The NA Kerfuffle says, out of morbid curiosity, what aspects of anime have you actually enjoyed, if any? Well, I mean, I've already said I like some of it, like Legend of the Galactic Heroes, so I obviously enjoy some. Also, if you have not written off anime entirely, you're like, why do people do this? This is why people can't get into anime who are like intellectual people, who are normal people, and aren't just damaged and affecting Chinese fucking identity to replace their own lack of a personality. Is everyone who's in it's a fucking zealot who thinks it's all the shit. That's just stupid. I always give this example. I like, for example, like fucking, what was it called? Like, what was that genre even called? Was it called like rap metal or some shit? Like, you know, when like fucking Limp Bizkit and all that shit. I was loving that shit in back in the day. I still think some of it's pretty good now. I don't like every band. I don't like Power Man 5000 or whatever. I don't have to. It's like the best shit, can't I? And even then in my own way. So I think people go way too far trying to be like zealots. Like, the purity. Oh, you don't like it at all? Wow, you can't even see what's good about it, bro. It's like, mate, I've said some of it's really good. Just it's not the shit that y'all are going to sell everyone fucking One Pieces to shit. Or Dragon Ball Z and grow the fuck up. I would like to recommend 2015's Death Parade. Okay, I've heard about it. Maybe check it out sometime. I will say, this is well, maybe I'll get into it in a second. If I were to make an argument why, I particularly like the usage of a bartender. One can say a bartender is a spectator of all walks of life, fulfilling the role quite well. Listen, that's totally legit. I'm not denigrating you, but that does sound, that last part, a little bit like something that like a lot of people probably say about that, and it's like that's the cool like take on it, whatever. Maybe I'm just being an arsehole there. I have been known to do that. And then some guy like replies saying some other shit about the bartender, because again, in anime world, like they can't just say like, I enjoyed this and here's why. I like the way you did right though by giving the hook. That's the thing they always fuck up with giving up anime or any shows, by the way. You don't tell them it's really good and I really like it and I really think this is really good and this one character, and you give away spoilers. What you do is you tell them like a thing that'll hook them into it, a gimmick that'll get them into it, a premise that'll get them into it. Like I'll give you an example. I won't do it right now entirely, but if I told you the premise of the novel The Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis, where it's this older demon who's telling this younger demon how to like fucking like lead a man astray and how to like play on his desires and stuff. It's what a genius premise, what a fucking sick concept for a book, right? I don't need to tell you anymore. If that sounds like it makes you curious, you might go check that out, right? That's what you got to do. Give them the hook, and don't ever give someone some whack thing that you just liked because of some weird idiosyncrasy in you. So what I would say basically is, the main issue with anime goes like this. The fans are what put you off. The fact that everything's 9 out of 10, like that ruins it. The fact that the popular stuff is just 14-year-old kids fucking diluting the ratings. What else? Oh yeah, people tell you stupid shit like, it gets really fucking good about episode 40. It's like, I'm out. Sorry. Nah, I'm not doing that. Nah, I'm not doing that, mate. I'm not going 40 episodes in and then find out it's shit. Like, you know what? People hate this fucking take. I don't give a fuck. I think Breaking Bad is so overrated. I thought it was decent with a couple of really good episodes. Lots that were like, just like, what is this? Some that was shit, by the way. Some characters that were shit. And every fucker told me, yeah, but dude, like when you get to season 4, it's unreal. I watched the whole thing. I was offended by how bad some of the ending shit was. Like, I won't do a spoiler, but a certain sort of Two-Face type scenario, if that's subtle enough for you. Like, some of that was fucking absolute trash. And y'all were eating that up. And when I watched the 4 seasons, not the hotel, obviously, when I got to like that point at season 4, I remember calculating, I think I'd watched like 60 hours of show, and I was like, have I invested 60 hours? Because retards on the internet basically told me this was God tier. I'm never doing that again. So what I do now is this. I aggressively and ruthlessly quit shows as soon as I see like there's just nothing going on here. This is a cul-de-sac and a date for me. So what I do instead is, I don't just watch episode 1. That's the classic problem that like casuals do. Like, I didn't get it. Wasn't that good? Or worse, like it's a fucking pilot or something, mate. So what I do instead is this. With anime, classic move for me is I find the really high-rated ones, the ones that look legit. And what I do is I download the first 5 episodes. If when I'm like 3 episodes in, I'm not getting anything, I'm out instantly. I'm never going to watch it. I get delete it. If I get like 3 in, it's like, something here. I'll see if I get to 5. If I get to 5 and there's still nothing, listen, the time sink's too much there, mate. There's other shit in the world I can consume where it could be good from episode 2. I don't need to go to fucking episode 10 or 20 or whatever to get to your shit. Like, that sounds to me like you have a pretty limited view of things. I haven't watched that much stuff. And so to you, that is next level shit. You're like the guy constantly recommending those books. I'm going to be mean here. The sort of books that like Travis and Scara always talk about on their social media. To me, those are like just like slightly above average series in a fictional universe, and they're just into that series or that author's style or the characters. But like, that's not God tier shit, mate. Like, in fact, I'd even say to them, mate, yeah, you read, but you're like some next level read. Like, you're wasting your time with shite. There's the classics you'll never get to. So anyway, whatever. I'm being an elitist there because that's what I fucking do. Why are you on the channel, dickhead? So what I would say is this. I'll start with the one I always say. The best anime ever, hands down, no competition for everything. Detail, depth, character development, plot, intrigue, like unusual twists of how you do things, like scale, scope, how many episodes, lack of filler. Every episode is fire, is the Legends of the Galactic Heroes. Or Legends of the Galactic Heroes. It's just sick. If you're one of those idiots who somehow can't watch stuff from like 1990 or whatever, like, I don't like the graphics, which is still fine, by the way. It's not like some super terrible stuff. Then you can watch this like remake they're making now, but they just haven't finished it. I haven't watched it yet, but it's apparently like newer graphics. So you can watch that. That's probably cool. I think the original's straight fire, personally. So I think it's epic. It's got the story building element. The length is super appealing. Anyone who goes, this book's too long, look how long it is. If it's a book straight fire, you're loving it when you're like quarter way. Oh my God, this is awesome. Philosophy, There's something that explores in that. And I know you're going to go, they all do that. Actually, the other one, Neon Genesis Evangelion was like, no, because here's the point. Those used philosophy as just like a shitty theme to the series. Like, I'm going to do this. Like what I appreciate, I actually even appreciate Westworld for this. The actual philosophy angle was pretty deep in that. And they were actually exploring it. And they were really trying to do something interesting. And it was central to the plot. It wasn't sprinkled in afterwards. One thing I hate about anime, and I'll actually skip to talk about this to Neon Genesis Evangelion, because it is one of the better animes, but it isn't the best. And the reason it isn't the best is exactly that. It is quite unique. Now, I will say the flaw with that show is if you've never watched the mecha shows before, you're going to watch it all and be like, what the fuck are all this? Because you won't know what the tropes they're sort of referencing are. It's a bit like Nietzsche. You sort of need to know some of the things that Nietzsche was referencing or the schools of philosophy he was addressing to really know why he's a super genius. So when you know what they're referencing, yes, it's very clever and it's got some aspects that are good and it's certainly compelling. But the saddest thing is this. When I started getting drawn in by the overall total plot above the episodes themselves, like the main plot, I was thinking this is really interesting. Like I was loving the symbology. Like, holy shit, like a Korean show has this in it. And I tell you what, I was so incredibly underwhelmed by the last episodes where I realized that whole theme, the whole Lilith angle and stuff, that was just window dressing. In fact, if you look it up, that's essentially what they did. They just looked up a bunch of stuff and they were like, right, well, we'll just make that the angle. So instead of it just being like mecha, but it's like Japanese mecha or something like that, it's like, we'll just drop that over. A bit like in Code Geass, another great one, probably one of the best. They put in all that whack shit about like Britannia and stuff, and you think, oh, where's this going? And again, no, that was just the particular theme. So in the same way as I made all those comments about like, all those TV shows, comic book TV shows, are just like drama, and usually a mixture of like a police procedural or Monster of the Week type format. And then they just go, this one is a Superman one, and this one is a Wonder Woman one, and this one is a guy who's Spider-Man. Like, they just ruin it. And so it just becomes like, wait a minute, I'm not actually watching a show about that. I'm watching some stupid high school teen drama about that. So that's the problem I had with Code Geass in that regard. But I'll get to that in a second, actually. The thing I like about Code Geass, and this is something I do like about anime, that's very unique, actually, is outside of like R-rated movies, in particular like foreign language ones, what you get in Code Geass that you don't get in a lot of other shows, it's similar in Death Note, is the villain or the anti-hero can be the main character and he is unleashed. What I loved about Code Geass is like just the sheer mania and the scale of what he's trying to do is fucking awesome. I did think, unfortunately, in season 2, a lot of that got really stupid. Like all the stuff they did with, spoiler, certain like other characters that had relation to him, as it were, I thought was very silly and actually just made for season 1 almost like defunct. Like a lot of the shit he was doing there, actually, it wasn't that, like he was always going to get into some issues in a sense. Like they actually sort of invalidated the plot in some ways. So I know everyone goes, how can you say that the ending is the best? Like, all right, mate, it was good. I'll just say that. It was good. But even then, some of the stuff that led up to it was absolutely outrageous. Like some of it really went off the rails. But I like the idea of the villain, the way they do that aspect. Similarly, like Death Note, that's one that the plebs will recommend with One Piece. But that's the key thing. It's the main idea of Death Note, it's what's fire. And the execution, I'd say, over maybe the first, 10, 12 episodes is pretty good. After that, especially once a certain character dies, it gets absolutely shit. And I even think the war with that character was drawn out way too long and was too much of like the shit that I hate. Basically, I'll tie it back into Code Geass. This is how based I am. One of the stupidest parts in Code Geass is a certain chess battle that they have where it's like he just like violates the rules of chess. It's like, oh my God, how can he do that? It's like, who wrote this? Like, at least look into it for fuck's sake. Like, that's not even artistic license. So similarly, like, they were trying to go too deep into like, I know that you thought I'd thought that, but I thought that you thought that I thought that I thought that. And so I made it so that actually I was thinking that you think that I think that I thought that. And I instead thought that. And then I also made myself forget so that when I would think that, you'd think that I thought that. But later on, I'd remember that I didn't think that I thought that I thought that I thought that you thought that I thought that I thought that I thought that because I didn't think that. It's like, whenever people do that, they aren't Christopher Nolan or his brother Jonathan Nolan. And what tends to happen is, or Alan Moore, they aren't actually good enough at plotting it. They get too clever for their own good, and it just comes off as wankery. It just comes off as like, well, I already knew what you would do, so I planned it before. It's like, there's a reason why to pull that off, you have to be the best at execution. You have to be a genius almost. So, yeah, Death Note's a great idea, has a pretty cool character. I did think it got shit at the end, and the way it ends is actually just offensive to everything about the show. Like, logically, it shouldn't have ended that way. What else? Let me think. I'm not going to do all of them, so I'll go quickly. Like, one, because, I know I actually referenced this later, because it's a similar question. I'm a massive fan of Satoshi Kon. Sadly, didn't make enough stuff. Just the human element is amazing in his work. The imagination is very unique compared to anime. I would suggest that if you're not even into anime. Start with Paprika. And then Millennium Actress. Cowboy Bebop is good. I enjoy it in the same way as I'll watch any movie Quentin Tarantino makes. Not all of them are going to be amazing, but I just like the style and what he does with it and how he weaves in all the references. Cowboy Bebop is very similar. The flair is obvious. I personally have a heretical opinion. I don't think there's all this amazing depth in the characters. I think that depth only seems amazing if you yourself have some paper-thin 2D fucking personality that's like, I am an edgy street punk who likes anime and I also have this piercing and this tattoo represents the way that my grandmother like raised me as a child. It's like, that sounds like someone affecting a personality, like trying to prove so. So to me, that's what that show is for. It's basically like, as in the story elements of her poses, in my opinion. Again, I don't give a fuck. You're on my channel, homie. I'm just going to say what I think. I should probably have done actually a video about anime like this, but whatever. You get a free thing inside your fucking Patreon aiming. That's the level of value I add, bitch. So I do think it's incredibly visual, though, and it's a really fun show to watch. Yeah, of course. Ghost in the Shell, pretty much all of that shit was pretty cool, because again, it's kind of a Westworld scenario. They play with the philosophy. I even like the Western movie. I think that's mad underrated. I think people went way too far going ham on that. I thought they did a very interesting visual style with it. But yes, obviously the cartoon and stuff was better. Yeah, I say cartoon, dickhead, because anime is still cartoons. Calm down. You know what? I'll say one thing. I'm not going to reference any more and we'll move on after this. But I'm going to say Dragon Ball Z, right? And you're going to go, what? After all that you said? No, it's not a good show. It's the worst show ever for filler. The actual plot isn't very good. Here's the problem. Dragon Ball Z, it fails where Code Geass and Death Note and even Legends of Galactic Heroes really succeed. Dragon Ball Z didn't understand what they had in Vegeta. I've apparently read something that like the guy who read it didn't particularly like the character. Like, you are a fucking moron. Goku is a trash character. That guy is like almost a fucking, I think, what's it? Is it like Gary Stu is like the male version of the Mary Sue? That guy is trash. But he just, he's the best guy ever for no reason. Like Jesus just believes in everyone and he loves everything and he does train, but then he just always has to be the best. It's like they ruined that show. Here's what should have happened in that show, right? Initially, he should have always beaten Vegeta because Vegeta had like hate in his heart and then like jealous of him and all that. But as soon as Vegeta became like just more of an anti-hero and slightly more towards the hero side, they should have shown that ultimately in one of the main massive pivotal battles, it should really have been Vegeta that saved everyone. And what it should have shown was redemption from the dark side, that you can channel those strengths. Because basically, Vegeta was the guy who actually sent the message about hard work and about aspirations and ambition and what you could do. Sometimes you channel it for ill, sometimes you can channel it for good. Like, that should have been the message of that show, in my opinion. So anyway, it's not a good show, but that one character was so fucking wasted. He should have, or even if he didn't win, he should at least have had the lead a few times, or got more wins, or even beaten Goku at some point in time that would force Goku to... I could rewrite that show about 10 times fucking better. Right, the end of anime segment. Right, Coach Sonny. I have been a manager for most of my esports career and really enjoy... But I want to have more impact on the team in the games. I've tried coaching some Danish teams around top 10 to 20. Yeah, it seems debatable that they're in the top 10, mate, but whatever. I assume he means between 10 and 20. Even then, maybe for like a week, but okay. But I think I would be better suited as an analyst. Maybe he's in League of Legends, to be fair. How many teams are actually you? Oh, he might mean in the top 10 to 20 of Denmark. There we go. How many teams are actually using Analysts? I feel like teams or orgs don't really use it. Not even people like me that have a passion for eSport and don't require salary. Like, don't say you don't require salary or anything. Listen, yeah, to get your foot in the door maybe. But like, once you know you're good and you build your craft, you should actually be demanding more salary than some other people because you're going to be worth it. And that's what you're going to communicate to people and you're going to have the confidence to give that off. So here's the point. Yeah, you're right. Teams have analysts, but they tend to just be a bitch who watches demos or just contributes things or writes loads and loads of stuff down. Then teams don't necessarily look at it or use it because a lot of people still try to play like old school like they do in soccer. Like a lot of this I'm playing for Philo. Like, you've got to be more aggressive, lads. Get in their face. Like there's a lot of that. And unfortunately, a lot of it comes from stupid pro players that loads of them don't understand the game. You know my rant about Nico and Carrigan, etc. And the way they visualize the game is very childlike and it's all based around what they think. So I do think in the future, though, big coaching staffs are a massive thing in League of Legends and CSGO. That's when I might even get involved. And you could have massive impact as an analyst, and you could be really, really good. So you find your specialist area, go super deep on it, create value that the team doesn't have right now, find ways to give them complicated information, give them the simple version of the information, give them information that's just relevant, or just amass of it and hit them with a brick wall. Like, I think there's a lot can be done there. I don't necessarily know how you can do it. I mean, quite frankly, mate, I'll be honest, I don't give a fuck. Like, just doing what I can, aren't I? Thanks for the question. Vigar says, if FaZe end up selling Nico to G2 or any other org, they obviously did, what is the future of the current FaZe roster and the org's future in CS, and what direction do you want to see the players go? Right, so future of the current FaZe roster, I mean, you've already seen they just brought back Olaf and they just sort of stumbling along because they've still got contracts and big salaries. The future of the org's future in CS, like, I personally think they'd probably leave CS or they just break up, because if not, they basically shouldn't rebuild from that core, probably, because you're not going to get a really great IDL to that team. So what you should probably do is just fire them all and then sign a new team and just get a good team, like buy like EG's team or some shit like that, you know, or you could have had 100 Thieves team or something. In terms of what I would want the players to do, like, I hope Cold Zero goes somewhere really good and plays. Listen, since the Brazilian scene's a bit of a fuck up, unless he's going to join Furia, go and join some international team, make a really good international team with a whole bunch of other good players. That would be pretty cool, right? Go join Mouse Sports or something, work with Carrigan, fucking hell, that would be good too. Oh, chef's kiss. I don't know if Carrigan could control him, but then again, he usually can for the first 6 to 9 months. In terms of the other players, I don't give a fuck about KRB. I mean, I do, but you have to get your shit together, mate, and stop talking shit. Come on, you aren't good. Like, you're not even that good at banter, to be fair. I think Rain is still underrated, but I also think he didn't have the mentality necessary to want to be the main star. And it sounds like he's going to go to another team. Brocky is pretty good for like a breakout player. I do think he's overrated. Most of this shit's online, but like, whatever. He could be in a mouse type team himself in the future. Seems totally reasonable. What else do I think? Do I even care about anything beyond that? Nah, not really. Right. Tonton Dzuris, or Dzuris, says, in football or basketball, we never see commentators, pundits, or players suddenly become the head coach of a top team without proving their capabilities in the role on a lower level. What are the differences in Counter-Strike that make such moves, like the ones of Moses and Henry G, not only acceptable, but even favourable? Well, let's think it through. Why doesn't even a really great basketball player just become straight away the head coach of another team? I gave you a second. Here's the reason why. Because there are already an enormous amount of very, very competent coaches, many of whom have been coaching for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They've basically spent their life just coaching, even if they had a career as a player before, executive, whatever else they did. So as a result, the competition, like their experience as a player, doesn't actually overwhelm what those guys have as coaches. Well, then you have a situation where you go, you prove yourself, you learn the skill of coaching from people like that, you work your way up, and eventually you get your chance, right? Well, that's the point. Who are we comparing these CS coaches to? There is nobody like that. The people who even were the coaches tended to just be the like ex-IGLs from Saucer 1.6 or now from CSGO. So there's plenty of coaches that have no real experience even at coaching. People just give them the job because that job didn't really properly exist until a few years ago. Like, let's say it only really became like ubiquitous like 4 or 5 years ago. So there aren't the lifers that you have in those other sports. There's no training method to train up coaches. There's barely any really good coaches. That's why I go on and on about the ones that are really good. The others, like, they're just trying what they can, or they're secretly just a demo analyst or a guy that can sort of break down one thing or can just help you see like some things as a matchup if you're just a fucking IGL who's playing in the game or a star player or something. So the main thing is, when I talk about no lifers, not in the way that they'd say, like, stupid. I mean, there are no people who are lifers. Well, there are. They are those people. Moses and Henry G are lifers compared to most of the coaches that are active right now. Their experience in CS is way higher. They haven't worked with teams. They're going to have to work on that skill set, but they're super qualified. They're some of the most qualified people in the entire industry. Same for me. So, yeah, there we go. There's some reasons. WNZTA, your boy's back. And he says, what would you consider a failure for this G2 roster at the upcoming World Championship? And should they look to make any roster changes if they fail? Right, obviously, I've already talked before that they could make all those. By the way, in general, I would have kept this 5, which is tough because how can you change out like perks and stuff? So that's why I would probably just keep this 5 and roll the dice again, if I'm being honest. But I pointed out the ones I could have made in that first question. So here's what I'll say. You're going to think I'm cheating now, but I'm not. I would have said this before the event. I think where they finished, semis and semis losing to the eventual champion is the minimum result that lineup should have accepted. Now, no, not based on summer form. Of course not. not based on the form in the group stage. But I'm talking about the potential of that lineup and the reason you kept that whole lineup together again and even had signed them for 2021. It's because you wanted at a minimum, like semis results, and like, we've got to compete with the eventual champions. We took our game off them convincingly. So, yeah, that was the minimum that was acceptable, in my opinion. Good would have been World's Finals, and then maximum potential was win the tournament. Like, not in this meta, but for the lineup, that is. Right, Pedro Rojas says, what is the highest peak a team has hit, both in CSGO and 1.6? Right, he gave like a compliment, but I won't read that out. So in CSGO, the obvious pick is obviously Astralis, right? Because in terms of like, they had the tactical game, everyone performed very well in their roles, they evolved the meta, they just had the least disfavorable matchups in the history of the game. If you want to go elsewhere, for clutch factor, Fnatic 2015 is a great example. Nip at the beginning of the game, just in terms of the skill disparity for some of the players, was very, very impressive. So I'm going to go with Astralis for CSGO. For 1.6, I'm going to go a little bit different, where even though that game very much could have a lot of tactics in it, and so I was a massive fan of MTW 2008, I actually think overall, if I want to talk about peak, I think the peak is actually Fnatic 2009. Like, I think the Poles stealing that WCG from them that's one of the big what-if moments in history. Because if that team wins that WCG, I'd probably hail them as the greatest team ever, even with what came after and what came before. So Fnatic 2009, just the peak of what they did in the server, they just destroyed you. And they destroyed you in a way where there was nothing you could have done, because tactically, well, their style, hard counter tactics. And skill-wise, you couldn't beat them skill-wise. They had like 3 of the top 10 players in the world. Some would say top 5, I'd say top 10. They had amazing role player elements. They had a style that fit them very, very well. They were just unbelievable. They were basically what FaZe Clan tried to be in CSGO, but they just were in 1.6. Obviously, Na'Vi's up there, super clutch, the consistency, the map pool, beating all your opponents generally, winning 4 majors in a row, 5 major finals in a row. Markov, everyone fits their roles. Like, that's a very impressive team as well. I go between, and if I want to talk about greatest team ever, I think Na'Vi's the greatest 1.6 team ever, but the peak, in my opinion, is 2009. Like, Na'Vi had some elements where they also beat you with team play and tactics and stuff. If we want to talk also about mad, like, peaks, it doesn't have to be skill, just performance. Got to say SK Sweden 2003. Just, again, unbelievable fragging, not the most tactical style, but just counters every style, destroys everyone, beat like the second and third place teams, 16-6 and 16-5, or 13-6 and 13-5, depending on the tournament. Like, unbelievable team. Carl Sung says, why do you think that North American League of Legends is the worst of the 4 major regions, whereas games such as Counter-Strike have shown that NA is capable of producing world champion caliber teams? By the way, I'll also say Soul's Dota 2. Ignoring the fact that only Europe and NA participate in many of the other titles. Thank you. Right, I can't just ignore it, mate. That's a massive factor. Except I wouldn't put it like that. I would say more specifically, the lack of all the big Asian countries is what makes that. Like, for example, even the Dota 2 example I gave. Now, I do think the way Dota 2 works as a game actually is more comparable to the last couple of years how leagues worked, which is why the Great Western teams, G2 and even like Team Liquid had some performances, Fnatic more recent. I think that's why they've been able to compete and sometimes even win. So that's why in Dota, for example, EG still would have been amazing. But if you had in loads of Koreans, people like Cloud9 would have gotten way, way worse, etc. I think for me, a big angle is that the game in CS, you can get away with being just very skilled and playing loose in a way that you can't as much in League, in my opinion. Like, the game in League emphasizes strategical understanding. Now, don't get confused. I didn't say tactical understanding. Like, this is how you set up a thing here, or this is how you do a play, or how you execute it. I said strategical, understanding of where you are in the meta game, what the correct overall, like, what style counters this style, or what do you do when this type of a game state occurs? Where do you try and head in terms of theoretically? I actually think certain players like Hillestad are like mad underrated, almost geniuses in that regard. Just they're not utilised correctly by their team. Like, put him on G2, mate. They'll do some very interesting comebacks. I think teamwork is a bigger deal in League of Legends in some senses. It can be very big in CS, but you can also get away without it in certain scenarios that you just can't in League of Legends, in my opinion. So I find that NA teams and Americans in general often struggle with the strategical aspect because they overly emphasize the individualistic aspect of the game because they are an overly individualistic society. Now, without going into a whole conspiracy thing, I think that's part of an agenda that's pushed to corrupt the values of people and to make them just into fucking consumers and robots. And so we won't go too deep down that rabbit hole, but I think that is a problem that's affecting their culture. Like, there's a lot of dark and negative things about Korean culture, but you see some of the positives in their champions. You see how unity, teamwork, structure, doing your job. Like, Koreans in League of Legends are like the Patriots in the NFL. They don't even need to necessarily, I mean, they do have the best players as well, but they wouldn't need them. Like, even without the best players, like, they would be very, if you give them NA's talent, but they had that work mentality, they'd still be a top 2 or 3 region in the whole world. There's loads of talent in NA in terms of, like, you can bring the players over, and still a few players from the region, but they need shaping better. You need to work more on the coaching and the theory side. And so I do think that limits their style effectively. But listen, whenever you get genius teams of the best players, I mean, Team Liquid beat IG, the reigning world champions, in a best of 5 series. For all you know, if IG wins that series, maybe IG just stomps G2. There's a world that happens. So people never credit some of those aspects. So I think if you have the right talent, you still can compete. It's only the top 1 or 2 teams can. Zoomba Gaming says, I might have to speed some of these up, boys. I was wondering what you think of this mentality people have that you must practice the most you can in League of Legends. Probably comes from Korea and the culture of playing. Do you think it's sustainable? Because if we're talking about players having to go play for long times, we get veterans, it probably, like, you know where he's going. He did that thing where he just answered the question himself. Right, the issue is way more nuanced than that. Never use single factor analysis. Basically, here's the thing. First of all, I'm never going to say don't practice a lot, because most people in the West don't practice enough, or the way that they practice, they don't do enough practice with purpose enough in that sense. Like, a lot of people just do what their team asks and that's it. And then because we don't want to burn them out, we don't push for more. The issue is this. We still don't really know what the limits are on practice. So I know some brilliant people who practice to a level that's unbelievable. Like in StarCraft 2, you had like Snoop did it. And he said famously when he's playing like 50 games a day, he would just start dreaming about the game and he just entered like a different consciousness almost. But you know what? He leveled up super much in a few months. Nanawa, my boy, you can see the interview. He was going super deep on that shit in a way that no Western player was. David Goggins is a guy on YouTube I'd suggest looking up for clips. He has a very interesting mindset to how you work hard. I do think, though, once you know the limits, now you want to work smarter, not harder. And that isn't just something that people say at fucking conferences to sound cool or whatever, like a buzzword type phraseology. I mean, like, you need to work a lot more on theory instead of raw practice. You need to study opponents a lot more and in a very calculated way. You need to have complementary trainings like working out together and playing team sports together and trying certain games together and maybe like playing another esports game together. All sorts of things that would actually enhance what you're doing with the rest of your practice. So you have the practice that doesn't burn you out, and then these other things enhance it. And then if 1 or 2 people want to be a Kobe Bryant and go fucking ham, that's on them. If they can handle it, they're just built different, aren't they? Girthy Moth says, in another timeline where you are unable to continue residing in the Netherlands, where do you choose to move to and why? Cheers. Right, the obvious one's South Korea. It's the coolest place I've ever lived in general. Just really enjoyed living there. Access to everything. Convenience store 24/7. Korean barbecue 24/7 if you know what you're doing. You can go party at 4 a.m, still loads of people out. Like there's a lot of angles to that can be very, very fun. But that's also of another lifetime. That was my past. That was who I was back then. I'm a different person now. It's not really the thing for me now. I'm loving Netherlands. I wouldn't necessarily hate it if I had to go back to the UK. I just wouldn't necessarily go to my area, or if I lived in my area, I wouldn't live in the same sort of... I wouldn't necessarily live so urban, essentially. So the UK... It's basically the thing I never appreciated when I left, right? Because I was too young, I was too much in a stupid tech shit because I was going down that rabbit hole. Yeah, we all get trapped in psyops, boys. Basically, what I didn't understand about the UK is the reason why they're able to inspire those romantic, patriotic notions of the UK and why you can get people to fight in a war for it is, it's not a lie. If you go out on the right day in England, when the sun is out or it's an autumn, like setting sun, it's the reason why I always retweet that like romanticism art of like certain paintings like this. Is something unbelievably unique about that place in that one regard, how picturesque it can be. Now, obviously, a lot of artists came from that. It's a part of why this school's developed, blah, 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 whatever. But the point is, like, the rolling fields, the forests, the hills, the sea areas. There's a reason why, put it this way, Westeros just is England and the UK. I'm sorry, it just is. That's what even based all the culture and all those aspects and the different locations. It's just such a unique place. I can totally see why they were able to spin that like elite narrative that like we are the continuation of the Roman Empire, but also like all sorts of that shit, mate. There's just something about it that can be magical in a way. And so I could tap into that, mate. I could fucking love that shit. Starkiller Station. Okay, so what do you think of this? Play it out round by round. What do you think would happen if somehow this was set up? Sam versus Vince. He means Bainlaw versus former Metis. In a professional Russian slap duel. The loser has to spend 6 months trying to stay alive in a forest full of bears who have spent the last year being forced to watch online MIBR. So the joke is, like, you've got to win this because you're not just getting slapped. Like, it's going to be a nightmare. Right, here's the thing. Since we're going round by round, I'll give you this. Sam 100% wins round 1 because Vince actually is a little bit too much of a nice guy, whatever. That's a joke. But in the sense that, like, listen, you've seen all the videos he does. He's constantly opening up his vulnerability. Like, he is a guy who can be easily offended by certain things. Like, stuff can just get a little bit too deep and hit a nerve. So initially, Sam has that rough element of coming from fucking where he comes from, Port Albert in Wales, where initially he would just have the savagery to just... He'd get the mega slap in. So if he gets the KO slap, he wins right there. But here's the thing. In round 2 or round 3, this is where Vince understands himself, and maybe he doesn't. I don't know. Instead of feeling sorry for himself or feeling like, oh, another bad thing happened in life, if he tapped into that darkness and said, in this moment, listen, I have to get over it in the future, but in this moment, if I channel that, if I take that pain and the fact that I've experienced that pain and that this guy maybe hasn't, or people wouldn't understand where I've been and the things that I've survived and what that means about me as a person that I'm still going, if he taps in that, he channels it like the fucking dark side, the Sith in Star Wars. What people don't know is the people who wrote Star Wars and directed them were fucking hacks, so they never explored how interesting that aspect was. Like that whole thing in like that fucking Force Awakens, the one good moment in the whole movie is that scene on that spaceship where Kylo Ren's talking to the Vader mask. If that was the whole series, that'd be straight fucking fire. But they threw that in the fucking trash can and wrecked the whole thing and never understood what they had in that moment. So if you can tap into it in that way and channel it, in a moment you could be more powerful in some ways. The other guy's principles you won't go past. So Vince could win in that regard. But then if that doesn't work, Sam probably still come back. So y'all don't understand Sam, but whatever. You'll get your chance. Not in a slap fight to the death, obviously. Rudy 2K1. If you had full control at Riot for LCS and also full control of every LCS org, how would you go about fixing NA? And despite the changes, do you think NA could ever be as close to CN or KR? So first of all, I have all the orgs as well. All my import positions, I import the absolute best players possible. And part of that is you've got to really up your shit in terms of the pitch you give to them. You can't say, hey, I have a lot of money, Chovy, you want to come? Like, it's got to be better than that. Like, you've got to go there, you've got to Korean people, you've got to talk to him for years, you've got to set things up, you've got to show him that he's going to have a house, you're going to bring some of his family over, a couple of friends, you're going to have a facility, you're going to commit to the project, and you're going to have the most unreal, like, remember, LA has loads of Koreans, you're going to have the unreal Korea away from Korea. You're going to have a second soul. There you go, get another soul, NA. But in terms of other things, like in terms of the raw talents, I would test them out on the other levels. Like, for example, I'd get like the academy teams and the newer players and the subs, and I'd constantly be sending them a Korea for boot camps when they're not playing here. I'd fly over streamers, put them in team houses, or have them practice with us to improve the practice. I'd have the FPL type system where all the top pros could play. I'd have enormous coaching staffs, because I've got more money. Only the Chinese could match us, and they're not training right now. I'd have enormous coaching staffs covering every aspect of the game, the best people in the whole scene. You know some of the people I'd pick. I'd have a house on the East Coast that we could sometimes scrim Europe on, not terrible ping. The point is this. When he says, and despite the changes, do you think NA could ever still be as close to CN or KR? I mean, they already have for moments, right? So the key thing is you've got to put the absolute best players in the region together. And then, yes, Team Liquid can beat IG in a match. Yes, Cloud9 could be brilliant at times with Jensen. It's possible. So it is possible that you've got to really max everything out. That's what's cool about esports games. Like it happened in Counter-Strike. In Counter-Strike 1.6, Korea just wasn't big into CS. But there was one team of all the best players generally, and they were mega. And there was actually two technically, but the other one wasn't as consistent. Django Tango says, what are your thoughts on broadcasting talent in your esports taking over the show? Ooh, this is going to be edgy. While I was initially a fan of the LEC rebrand, sometimes it feels like the broadcasting talent are more interested in making the show about themselves than in presenting the gameplay and analysis. The recent Shocks monologue in the middle of the Fnatic top BO5 is the most egregious example to me, where it feels like the broadcast is being made to serve the talent rather than the talent serving the broadcast. Right, you come to the right... you're in the right fucking town here, sonny boy, because I'm the only person in this motherfucking industry who's going to answer your question, and in doing so, hurt people's feelings. But you know what? in the right sense, in the sense that like a fucking Zen monk would, if you go there and you say, Master, I wish to learn what you have learned over your 30 years. He's not going to go, well, I'll just tell you a lot of pleasing lies. He's going to fucking hurt you with the truth, right? So here's what I'm going to tell you. First of all, it's quite funny because I think you actually probably aren't aware of this, but because you're probably from League of Legends, in CSGO, I'm doing that right now with Flashpoint. Me and Monty have taken over it, and I'm even getting the talent involved in the skits and the ideas, but here's what's different. That works under the right circumstances. What's different is this. I'm not just talent. I've spent at least the last 5 years studying the production and the other aspects of making a show. That's one of the things I was doing when I was at ESL, watching some of the best stadium events going, how does that work? And what do you do then? So as a result, I also have leveled my skill set up in that regard. The problem with LEC is a lot of these guys, I mean, some of those guys have barely even been at the top of esports for like 3 years or 2 years, or they were like the junior guy when they first came there. So they just haven't really got that status, and they definitely don't have that understanding, except for rare cases, like maybe Quickshot has some of it. Shox has some of it, yes. Law maybe a little bit, but maybe not so much on the English broadcast. Like people don't realize she's actually a lot older than I think people understand, and has a lot more experience back in France doing media. Here's what I would say. I do think the LEC, the weakest part is when they flex into their personality over the game. Notice that key caveat. Because what made them famous was their personality and their skits and the fun aspect and the way they did the casting style, etc. The problem is I agree with you. I essentially think they went way too far and mistook themselves, because they were the ones doing the things, they mistook themselves for the show. They essentially pointed to the moon and looked at their own finger and went, that's bloody moon. Oh, fucking a moon with its own light. Reflecting the sun's light. And, the principle it represents. This moon is the best. It's like, that's your finger, you dumb fuck. Look past that. But they couldn't. So here's what I'm going to say right now. You see it particularly on Twitter. Oh my God, the narcissism that some of these guys have gone into. They have gone down a dark hole. I know they might just say, it's just my Twitter persona. It's boring, mate. It's not funny. Like, if you're a Fnatic fan and I play Fnatic, it's boring for you. For everyone else, it's entertaining, mate. For the people who like my shit, where it's like you call out stupid angles that people keep bringing up, yeah, it's entertaining. So I give a value add whatever I do. Some of this is just garbage. It's just people saying, why doesn't this account follow me? Why doesn't this account follow me? I want all the accounts to follow me. Like, that's not even funny. Like, you haven't even done a funny... You could even do a narcissistic angle where you're like, I'm so bloody crazy. But you haven't even leaned into that. It's just shit. Or it's people like, why am I verified? Why am I not verified? Have I been verified? You're like... And by the way, I love the verified guy. I think he's a fucking non-verified guy. I think he's actually the best caster on LEC. Just the problem is... he's following the rest of the fucking suit as far as I can tell. And then I'll just say this, especially along those lines, on the broadcast. Listen, I understand Froscorin and Dracos are friends. I even literally met Dracos in like 2015 or something in Korea when he came there with Froscorin, right? I know they're friends going way, way, way back. You can do in-jokes as long as they have an esoteric... They can have an esoteric in-joke as long as they have an exoteric value add to the fans. If they're also funny... that's cool. That's what Dora and Monty used to do. Their jokes are shit in jokes that are only funny to them to make each other laugh. And it's one thing if you do that in a BO1 in LEC. Don't do that on the fucking semi-final of Worlds between two contender teams. What are you wasting my time for? Like, you know what? When I'm watching a high-level game like that with massive stakes... I don't want to hear what you like to play in solo queue and that you have a really crazy... Oh, I love the fucking Hail of the latest time, Kent. You want to see mine, right? Shut the fuck up. It's not funny. It's not clever. It's just rank narcissism. Take a look at yourself. I should have done this as a separate fucking video. It'll be straight fire. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll spin it out into a bigger thing where I talk about all this. So basically, their main strength has become their weakness, because that's what happens when you only focus and you over-focus on your strength. What you have to do is shore up your weaknesses, and then your strength just makes you unstoppable. Here's the thing, though. I'll tie it in. They could be the best. They could fix all of this. They could have all the best gameplay stuff. And I mean, they need a couple more analyst people, but they put Froscorin in the right role. They could do it. There's a lot they could do and make it way, 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 way better. So if they ever hear this, have a look in the fucking mirror and reflect before you get mad that a ginger guy from the UK said it to you. Don't stare at my finger pointing back at you and go, your bloody finger. It's like, why am I pointing at you? What am I saying? Think about it. You could be better. And get over the narcissism. Or make it funny. Make it just like there's another thing people will never understand. Because they don't know me in person, they'll never know what is a joke and what isn't. Because they just think, I can decide what is and what isn't. Like, whatever. I'll say this, though. Just like I said earlier about Quickshot, I don't agree with you on the Shox angle. I actually thought listen, she's not like the most next level analyst, but I actually thought she made some very valid points in that. I thought it was a good piece. I even thought the timing was key because now it really would have meant even much more if they'd won game 3. I thought that was actually a pretty cool angle. I know what you mean. You thought like it's the fact it's her monologue and maybe she tied too much of herself into it. Listen, I don't care what people say. People are different. See how I did that? You can't get in trouble for that, right? People are different. Well, you will be in the future, but we'll all be in camps by then, mate. People are different, and different types of people are going to express things differently. Yours would be different. She has her idiosyncrasies. I thought she did a very good job. I think Shocks is one of the best things, if not the best thing about that broadcast. It goes like this, in my opinion. Shocks, for scoring if she's an analyst and gets her shit together and stops being a victimhood mentality, quick shot, ender, and then the others I think are just okay. I don't dislike them. Sometimes they can be good. I'll defend them if they get unfairly treated, but I don't think they've got their stripes fully yet. I think they need to level their shit up. I think they definitely need to take a look in the mirror. There you go. You never get fucking questions like that elsewhere, mate, in terms of the answer. Nice. 2 left. Right, here we go. We'll blast through these. I've got to get going. Xeno Dwarf says, I saw your Orson Welles video on your side channel. I find Orson Welles' movie to have a very unique perspective on storytelling and find myself watching anything he played a hand in. Same with me. I'm assuming you saw that in the video. Are there any other artists where you find their perspective on things so interesting that you would consume anything they did, even if it doesn't reach the highest quality? You'll find out what this is soon. Buy the ticket, take the ride, so to speak. It can be any medium of your choosing. Right. There are... but I'd be naming too many. It's better if I just pick a few and maybe say a couple of things about them. So since you said any medium, I'm going to go mainly with movies because you start with that, but I'll throw in a couple of other ones. So for example, I won't go super deep on it, but people know that like Robert Anton Wilson, Alan Moore, Terence McKenna, these are things I've already made videos about. You can go watch them. Those are things I'm super, super into. But let's do this. For me, they have to have, like you say, a very pure quality, a very pure perspective. What I'm trying to do when I analyze, not be the best analyst, I'm trying to have a pure perspective of what I think and how I structure it and then explain it to you. So I like, for example, Tarkovsky. I don't even find all of his movies super enjoyable to watch, but the effect they have on me, how they stay with me, haunting images, what they make me think of, some of the ambitious things that in his case, he didn't have to actually have the graphics or the sci-fi, the sets to even get fucking away with, but he just, the theatre of the mind, it's incredible. Similarly, Kurosawa, the body of work, the amount that's good, the amount that have like legendary performances, it's just unbelievable. Kubrick, another guy where my logic with Kubrick goes like this. If he made a movie beyond like the 1970s and put a lot of time in it, which he pretty much did, and especially later and later and later, if I don't fully enjoy it the first time I watched it or get it, I actually will take the assumption I'm probably wrong. And I'll wait and I'll study about it. I'll wait a few years till I've matured and experienced other things. And I'll come back to it and I'll again watch it very seriously. And the amount of times, Barry Lyndon's a great example of this. The amount of times that suddenly the key goes in the lock and it unlocks the gates and you're in a fucking paradise. It's unbelievable. Still doesn't mean they're the most enjoyable movies. That's not what the movies are necessarily about. That's what ruined movies, that they had to just be fun all the time. David Cronenberg's another one. Everything he's done from the 80s on, especially the 90s on. Like, I wasn't even a massive fan of Madame Butterfly, but even that had some very unique angles that were like, fuck, this is interesting. And when it's commentary, social commentary, oh, there's so much shit there, mate. I love that guy's work. And he also another one that works with low budget. There was a while where I thought Darren Aronofsky was going to be in this Cronenberg, Nolan, Cube type, but he didn't quite make it. His early movies are very good. Christopher Nolan, considering he makes blockbusters, every one of them is just worth watching and straight fire and has very interesting elements. I've already said Satoshi Kon from anime earlier. Some ones that you might not know, a little bit more underrated. Sidney Lumet is one of the most underrated of all time. Put it this way, Sidney Lumet is what they try to tell you Scorsese is. Super film buff who goes in all these, does all this stuff that harkens back. He's done way more movies and way more, I won't say way more. Here's the problem, he hasn't done as many good movies. Scorsese has some like really good, like, he has a really good A game. But Sidney Lumet's B and C game is, unbelievable, mate. Just go back, look for one that has a good actor in. Like, what is it? Like, so, How Many Ways to Die in Denver or fucking... There's so many classics he did, mate. So many. Just go back and watch them. Like, there's some banger movies out there. David Mamet, I think, is one of the best screenwriters. So most of the movies that he screenwrote, I'll watch. I find them very interesting, very cerebral. When he's at his peak, Francis Ford Coppola, like, for example, I know he became a bit of a hack later because he just became a producer, but he even did a movie people don't know about in like the 2000s that's a banger called Youth Without Youth. Just go check it out. It's a classic example of this type of a movie, like flawed gem that you watch. In comics and movies, Jodorowsky. I think in comics, actually what's crazy is I got really into his shit in like maybe last 10 years. Read nearly all of it. I actually think in comics, he's mad underrated. He is one of like the top 5 most genius comics writers of all time. He's unbelievable, the level he went to. In movies, again, a couple more. Woody Allen, I could watch any Woody Allen movie, and I love that he still makes them like every year. A guy who's actually, he's not really underrated because people like him, rave about him, but the amount of people who don't necessarily know that much, or they just know his movies and they don't know him. Charlie Kaufman, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Being John Malkovich. This guy, his mind is unbelievable. Like, he's just the guy I just want to make movies. Like, I'll watch anything he does, basically. So, yeah, there you go. There's a few for you. Last question. Kristen. Since Bjerg, I'm already worried that you said Bjerg, because, like, you call him Bjergsen if you're just actually, like, a normal person. If you call him Soren and you weren't actually a teammate, I actually genuinely think you're a K-pop stan. I will get the fuck away from you. If you call him Bjerg, that's already like, ha, my old pal. That would be like calling Tom Brady like Tommy Boy. Hey, what's Tommy Boy up to? It's like, it's just calling Brady or something, for fuck's sake. Now Bjerg is retired from playing. Does Jensen have a chance to surpass his legacy? I love the phrasing of that, so loaded. Or do you think that no matter what Jensen accomplishes, people will still argue Bjerg was better? So here's what I would say to you. I'd start by challenging your assumptions. I could already argue Jensen has surpassed Bjergsen's legacy. Like, yeah, he has less domestic titles. Guess what? The NA region domestic titles are the 4th worst region's titles in the entire history of League of Legends. Does that hurt your feelings? He still has 2. Bjerg has what? 7 now? 6 or 7? Okay. But here's the problem. What does everyone value the most in League of Legends? International play, mate. Right. Jensen has been top 4 at Worlds. Bjergsen never went top 4 at Worlds. Wasn't even close, by the way. Jensen's been in the final of MSI. Bjergsen's never been in the final of MSI. Jensen's beaten IG in a best of 5. Nothing comparable for Bjergsen. Jensen's beaten a Freak of Freaks, a top 3 Korean seed at Worlds in a best of 5. Nothing comparable for Bjergsen. Like, if you want to go accomplishments, I could make an argument Jensen's already surpassed him in terms of the overall legacy. If you want to talk about raw level of play, I think over their whole careers, I would probably say Bjergsen's slightly better. Keyword is slightly. For me, that is a 1A, 1B conversation. A bit like if you want in Europe now, the Perks Caps, it's a 1A, 1B. Depends what your preference is. But I agree with the second part when you ask, because it's loaded as well, like, do you think no matter what he accomplishes, people will still argue Bjerg's better? People already argue like Bjerg is 2 times or 1.5 times better. It's ridiculous. People actually argue in NA that because he doesn't have as many domestic titles, but then ignore the internationals because they're apparently not all Bjergsen's fault, yet everything domestic is Bjergsen's credit. What? That's apparently fine. So I think people will always downgrade Jensen, essentially. Like, just look at sports debates. Like, I'm supposed to believe, I won't go open this whole... But basically, put it this way. There are plenty of players, not even just quarterbacks, you can compare to Tom Brady. And you can have that debate with. And if you think there aren't, you're just a guy who worships trophies. And also, you think one man of a massive team won all those trophies. Like, it's too much. It's too much. Those debates, in my opinion, tend to just be whatever you like, you just dress up with whatever analysis fits, and then you just claim that that's the case. They don't try to reflect on what they do like I have done with Froggen over the years and Forgiven over the years and all these players. That's the end, right? So if you want to submit a question and you're a patron that donates $10 or more, there's a link in the description box below. And if you go to a different link in the description box below for Discord, you can go into the Patreon AMA channel and put the question there as well. This video was kindly supported by Pronogo, Mohammed, Alabdul, Razzaq, Dean Tanglis, James Pederson, VatriSam, ErikHillestad, Andreas Kroknes, Hades, Zoomba Gaming, JDubs, Tobias Bernasconi, and Alexander Rao. Special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for one of my upcoming episodes? Maybe you want to ask more of those questions in that video AMA I do each month. Do you want teasers? Find out who the next guests are for my shows. Well, maybe you even want to take part in one of those crazy donated discussions where we go all over the place. If any of these perks appeal to you, or you want to support the channel, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrolluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.